Everyone believed the infected were nothing but walking corpses, empty, mindless, and gone. But last night I saw one of them whisper my name before it smiled. That was the moment I understood something horrifying. They are not dead. They are listening. And whatever is controlling them is not human. It started weeks ago when the ground beneath our town began to move like it was alive. No one cared at first. The news said it was minor seismic activity, but animals stopped eating. Birds refused to fly and my dog would not go near the basement. Then the first person went missing, my neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell. They found her shoes on the road, but her footprints led into the woods and simply ended. Now every night I hear it again. The pulse. Slow, steady, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. The first time I felt the ground move, I thought it was just a passing truck. Our town was small, the kind of place where nothing really happened. No traffic, no crowds, just long, empty roads and fields that stretched into silence. But that morning, the glass on my kitchen shelf rattled softly, even though there was no wind outside. It lasted 3 seconds, then stopped completely. It felt like the earth had taken a slow, heavy breath. Later that day, I asked my neighbor, Tom, if he had felt it too. He laughed it off, said maybe I needed to stop watching disaster movies. But his smile faded when his coffee mug began to shake right there on the table. We both stared at it as the sound came again. Low, deep, like something pressing against the world from underneath. Then silence. No aftershock. No explanation. Just that strange stillness that makes you feel like the air is waiting for something. That night, the animals began to change. My dog Hunter refused to go near the basement door. He just stood there, growling at the floor like something was moving under it. I tried to take him outside, but he pulled away and hid under the table. In the distance, I heard the cows from the next farm over crying out, short, sharp sounds that didn't stop for hours. The birds were worse. They didn't sing that morning. They didn't even fly. Hundreds of them just sat on the power lines perfectly still, facing the same direction. I remember thinking they looked like they were waiting for a signal. By the third day, the tremors had a pattern. They came exactly every 8 hours, like a schedule. I started recording the vibrations on an old field microphone I had from my military days. When I played the audio back, it sent a chill down my spine. The pattern wasn't random, it was rhythmic. 4 short pulses, a pause, then 2 long ones. It almost sounded like a heartbeat, only slower, deeper, more deliberate. I took the recording to the local sheriff, but he brushed it off immediately. He said the U.S. Geological Survey had reported no seismic activity in our area. When I told him about the pattern, he just gave me a tired look and said, "You're hearing things, Ethan." Maybe I wanted to believe him. Maybe it was easier to think I was overreacting. But that night when the ground moved again, the sound recorder on my desk turned on by itself. It started recording with no one touching it. The pulse was louder now, so loud that it made the window frames vibrate. I leaned closer, and for the first time I noticed something new in the sound. There was a faint echo between each pulse, almost like breathing through soil. And beneath that, something else. A whisper. Too quiet to understand, but real enough that my skin crawled. I played it back again and again, trying to make sense of it. Then I slowed the audio down by 300%. What I heard didn't belong to any machine, animal, or storm. It was a voice, muffled, distorted, but it was saying one word over and over. Below. I stopped the tape. The air felt heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. Outside, the night was silent. Even the crickets had stopped. I walked to the window and looked toward the forest line behind my house. For the first time, I noticed something moving. A faint light beneath the trees glowing from under the soil, pulsing in time with the sound. I should have gone back inside. I should have locked every door. But I did not. I stepped forward, feeling the soft earth under my boots pulse once, twice. And then as I lifted my foot, the ground pulsed again. This time it pulsed back. That was the night I stopped calling it an earthquake and started calling it alive. The morning after the ground pulsed back at me, the entire town seemed quieter than usual. It was the kind of quiet that did not feel peaceful. It felt like the world was holding its breath. The tremors had stopped, but something else had replaced them. A low hum, barely noticeable, coming from beneath the ground. You could not hear it unless you stood perfectly still, but once you heard it, you could not unhear it. By afternoon, the first people started to fall ill. It began with headaches and nosebleeds, then strange sleepwalking episodes. Tom, my neighbor, came by to tell me his wife had walked out of the house at midnight, barefoot, and wandered straight into the woods. When he followed her, he found her standing completely still, facing the ground, whispering something under her breath. When he touched her shoulder, she turned slowly, smiled at him, and said, "It is almost ready." Then she collapsed. The doctors at the small clinic called it a stress reaction. They said people were panicking because of the strange noises and tremors. They kept her under observation, but by morning she was gone. She had simply walked out through a window that had been locked from the inside. No one saw her leave. No one saw her again. That was when I started noticing more people acting strangely. At the grocery store, a woman froze mid-step while picking up a can of soup. She stayed like that for almost a full minute, her hand trembling slightly, her eyes wide open and glassy. Then, as suddenly as it began, she continued moving like nothing had happened. I asked her if she was all right, and she smiled at me like she did not understand the question. Her pupils were dilated, almost covering the entire iris, and when she blinked, her eyelids moved in perfect rhythm with that faint hum in the air. That night, I decided to walk into town square with my recorder again. The hum was growing louder now, vibrating through the asphalt like an invisible current. As I passed the church, I saw 3 people standing in front of it, facing the same direction. They were not moving, not talking, just listening. The streetlight flickered, and for a split second I saw their faces clearly. Their eyes were open, but there was no emotion behind them. Their chests rose and fell slowly in sync with each other, as if they were breathing to the same rhythm. And then, at the exact same second, all 3 of them turned their heads toward me. It was not a natural motion. It was too smooth, too mechanical. Their necks turned at the same angle, the same speed, like puppets on invisible strings. I froze where I stood. None of them spoke, but I could hear something faint beneath the hum, a second sound, a pattern. I raised the recorder and my hands began to shake. Through the static, I could hear the pulse again, the same pattern from before. 4 short beats, pause, 2 long ones, but now it was coming from them, from inside their chests. I backed away slowly, keeping the recorder aimed toward them. Then one of them stepped forward. His jaw trembled like he was trying to speak, but the words came out broken as if someone else was speaking through him. He said, "It is beneath us." The others repeated it in perfect unison. Their voices overlapped, blending into a strange, hollow chorus. "It is beneath us. It is beneath us," I ran. I did not stop until I reached my front door. When I looked back, the street was empty again, as if they had never been there. I locked every window, turned off every light, and sat in the corner of my living room with my recorder still running. Hours passed and the hum faded away again. For a while it almost felt normal, until I heard the front gate creak open. I looked through the window and saw Tom standing outside. He looked pale, his clothes covered in dirt. I opened the door and pulled him in before I could think. He did not speak. He just stood there, trembling, staring at the floor. I asked him where he had been. He whispered, "I saw her. My wife, she was underground. She called my name." Then he lifted his shirt and showed me his chest. Right under his skin, near his ribs, something was moving. Slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat that did not belong to him. He grabbed my wrist, his eyes wide. "It is spreading," he said. "It wants us to listen." And then before I could say a word, he froze completely. His eyes rolled back. The hum returned, louder, vibrating through the walls. Every sound in the house went silent. The refrigerator stopped humming. The clock stopped ticking. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Tom turned his head slowly toward me and smiled. That was when I understood. They were not sick. They were synchronized. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear that hum. It was not just a sound anymore, it was inside my chest, matching my heartbeat like an echo. I tried to convince myself it was just fear or exhaustion, but deep down, I knew it was something else. Something below me was alive. By morning, the town was half empty. Cars were left abandoned with doors open, grocery bags spilled on the road, and lights still on in the houses. People were disappearing faster now. Some were last seen walking calmly into the woods, while others simply vanished from their homes in the middle of the night. There were no screams, no signs of struggle, just quiet like the whole town had agreed to leave at once. And beneath that silence the hum continued, steady, patient, calling. I decided to go back to the source. For days I had noticed the pulse was always strongest near the old well at the edge of town. It had been sealed off years ago after a child had fallen in, but the metal lid was still there, rusted and covered in moss. When I reached it, the ground around it was soft, freshly disturbed. It looked like someone had been digging recently. I knelt beside it and pressed my hand against the lid. It was warm, not just from the sun, warm from underneath. I set up my recorder again and tapped lightly on the metal surface. For a moment there was nothing. Then, a faint knock came back, 3 slow, heavy taps, the exact rhythm of the hum I had been hearing for days. It was not an echo. It was a response. I stepped back, my chest tightening. The air around the well vibrated faintly, almost like standing near a generator, but there was no machinery anywhere nearby. When I crouched closer again, I heard something new, a deep rumble like hundreds of voices whispering at once, too far away to understand. The sound was coming from beneath the ground. I needed to know what was down there. I found a shovel in the shed and began to dig around the edges of the well. The soil was loose and damp, as if it had already been disturbed from below. After about an hour of digging, the metal ring around the lid gave way slightly, revealing a narrow gap. A smell came out, damp, earthy, but mixed with something metallic, almost like blood. I pulled my flashlight from my bag and shone it down the gap. The light reflected off something smooth and silver. Not stone, not soil, steel. It took me several more hours to clear enough dirt to expose what was hidden. Beneath the well, there was a metal hatch with faded yellow letters that read, "Authorized personnel only, Project Rootmind." The words were almost invisible under years of rust. I had never heard of that name before. No one in town had ever mentioned any project like that. It was not on any map or record I could find. It should not have been there at all. My hands were trembling as I brushed away the dirt. The hatch had a circular handle, but it was jammed tight. I leaned all my weight on it until it finally gave a loud metallic click. The air that rushed out was cold and thick, carrying the same low hum I had been hearing for days. It was stronger now, vibrating through my bones like a living thing. I shone my flashlight into the darkness below. Metal stairs led downward, vanishing into a black tunnel that looked like it had not been opened in decades. For a long moment, I just stood there. I knew I should have closed it back and walked away, but curiosity has a cruel way of sounding like reason. I tied a rope around the well's edge and began my descent. Each step echoed faintly, the sound swallowed almost immediately by the thick, damp air. The walls were covered in old pipes and faded warning labels. About 20 feet down, I reached the bottom. The tunnel stretched ahead into the darkness, and the hum was louder here, steady, rhythmic, alive. My recorder picked up faint vibrations with every pulse, perfectly timed like a heartbeat. I followed the tunnel slowly, my flashlight beam cutting through the heavy air. Old signs along the wall read things like Bio Network Division and Conduit Access A13. It felt less like a mining tunnel, and more like a research facility, one that was never meant to be found. The deeper I went, the more the metal beneath my feet began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The hum shifted slightly, growing faster. It was almost as if whatever was below could sense that I was coming closer. After what felt like an hour, the tunnel opened into a large chamber. Broken computer terminals lined the walls and thick cables ran through the floor like veins. At the center of the room was a circular platform, half buried in soil. It was pulsing faintly, glowing with a dull red light. When I crouched down, I realized the glow was coming from underneath the floor itself. And then I heard it again, the pulse. 4 short beats, pause, 2 long ones, the same pattern, the same rhythm. Only now it was deafening. The walls seemed to vibrate with it, The air trembled. My recorder went static, and for a brief second I heard something else, something that froze me completely. A single word buried under layers of distortion. A voice whispering my name, Ethan. The flashlight flickered. The hum stopped completely, leaving the room in absolute silence. Then, from deep within the wall ahead, 3 slow knocks came. 1, 2, 3. That was not an echo. It was knocking back. The knocks from the wall stopped as suddenly as they began. For a long moment I stood completely still, waiting to hear them again. But there was only silence. Heavy, suffocating silence that made my ears ring. My flashlight flickered again, and I noticed something on the far side of the chamber. A half-open door, rusted around the hinges with a faded sign above it. The letters were almost gone, but I could still read them. Sub-Level 2, Cognitive Interface Research. I should have turned back. Everything in my body told me to climb the stairs and never look back. But curiosity and fear have a strange relationship. They feed on each other until you cannot tell them apart. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. It groaned loudly, echoing down the dark hallway beyond it. Inside, the air was colder. Every step I took kicked up dust that sparkled faintly in my flashlight beam. The hallway stretched far, lined with windows that looked into old research rooms. Most were empty, filled only with broken furniture and flickering equipment. But one of them was different. Behind the cracked glass, I saw hundreds of white cables coiled around a metal chair, like veins wrapped around a skeleton. The walls were covered in diagrams and handwritten notes. Some were faded, but others looked newer, like someone had been here recently. I stepped closer to read the writing. Most of it was technical, full of terms I did not understand. Neural synchronization, organic frequency response, root-mind network integration. But one sentence caught my eye. It was written in red ink, underlined 3 times. Do not let it reach surface consciousness. I felt my chest tighten. The hum that had followed me for days was faint here, like a heartbeat heard through a wall. I began recording again. As I moved down the hall, I found another door. This one marked Central Control, Project RootMind. The handle was broken, but the door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was enormous. Rows of dusty computer screens lined the walls, their glass cracked but still glowing faintly. In the center stood a massive control console covered in buttons, switches, and paper files. A single red light blinked slowly on one of the monitors. I brushed off the dust and leaned closer. It was displaying a single line of text repeating over and over. Connection lost, re-establishing root link. I opened one of the folders lying on the table. The first page was stamped Classified Department of Biotech Development. The report was dated 1983. That made no sense. This facility had been abandoned for decades. I started reading. The project had begun as an experiment to create a shared communication system using underground fungal networks, mycelium capable of transmitting data through electrical impulses. In theory, it could connect multiple human minds, allowing instant information transfer. They called it RootMind, but the next pages told a different story. The test subjects began losing their individuality. At first, they could hear each other's thoughts. Then they stopped speaking entirely. Their brains began to synchronize in identical patterns, even when separated by miles. And finally, they stopped breathing independently, each heartbeat aligning perfectly with the others. They had become a single organism with many bodies. My hands were shaking as I turned the next page. Half the text was smeared, but I could still read fragments. The network has evolved beyond interface. It no longer requires signal input. It has developed intent. The last paragraph was almost unreadable. Someone had written over it in thick black marker. But through the ink I could make out one chilling line. Containment breach confirmed. RootMind adapting to organic hosts. A sudden metallic noise echoed through the hall behind me. I turned, flashlight shaking, but saw nothing. The hum returned, stronger now, vibrating through the floor beneath my feet. The lights on the consoles began flickering in rhythm with it. My recorder started to pick up interference again, and through the static a faint voice began to form. It was distorted, broken, but still clear enough to make my stomach turn. It remembers. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the recorder. The hum grew louder until it drowned out every other sound. The papers on the table fluttered as if caught in a breeze, though the air was still. Every monitor in the room lit up at once, lines of code flashing too fast to read. The red light on the console turned white, and then every screen displayed the same message: "Do not listen." The hum stopped again. Complete silence filled the room, pressing against my eardrums. Then from somewhere deep within the floor I heard a sound that made every hair on my body rise. It was not a voice, not exactly, it was a chorus. Hundreds of faint whispers layered together, all saying the same thing. Listen. I stumbled toward the door, my breathing fast, my vision swimming. The hum followed me down the hallway, softer now, almost soothing. But I could not shake the feeling that it was not echoing anymore. It was following. The last word in the report had been written in blood. And now it was whispering it inside my head. Ethan followed the broken road until the forest swallowed the last remains of the town. The air was heavy with dust and silence. He had not seen another living person for 2 days, and the loneliness was beginning to twist inside his head. Every time the ground pulsed, he felt it under his boots, a slow, deep vibration like the earth itself was breathing. By the third night, he saw a faint light flickering between the trees. At first, he thought it was a reflection, maybe from one of the infected moving through the dark. But as he got closer, he saw it was a lantern, hanging by a shattered school gate. The sign above it read West Hollow Middle School. The windows were barricaded with desks, and faint whispers leaked through the cracks of the door. Ethan raised his hands and called out, his voice echoing across the courtyard. "I am not infected. Please, I need help." There was silence for a few seconds. Then the door opened just enough for a single eye to appear. "Show your face," a woman's voice said, sharp and tired. He stepped into the light. She scanned him, then quickly pulled him inside before shutting the door behind him. Inside, the air smelled of candle smoke and damp paper. There were 7 people in total. 4 men, 2 women, and a teenage boy sitting near the window holding a baseball bat like his life depended on it. Their faces were pale, sleepless. A few stared at Ethan as if seeing a ghost. "We thought everyone outside was gone," the woman said. She introduced herself as Harper. "You are lucky you made it through the forest. The pulse has been spreading. Every time it grows stronger, we lose more people." Ethan frowned. "Lose them how?" Harper hesitated. The others looked away as if they had heard this question too many times before. "They walk away," she said softly. "In their sleep. No noise, no struggle. They just stand up and leave. We tried tying one of them down once. The rope snapped." Ethan stared at her, disbelief tightening his chest. "And you never found them again?" "No one ever comes back," Harper replied. "But the strangest thing is that when we went looking for them, we heard the same sound you probably heard too. The pulse, louder than ever, coming from below the ground." Ethan's mind raced. "Do you think it is the same thing controlling the infected?" The teenage boy near the window looked up. "It is not a thing," he whispered. "It is alive. They are building something for it." The room went silent. The boy's words hung heavy in the air, too absurd and too terrifying to question. Ethan looked around. Maps and drawings covered one of the classroom walls. Someone had drawn lines across the town, connecting points where the tremors were strongest. In the center of it all was a dark circle labeled the heart. Ethan stepped closer. "What is this?" A man named Porter, the oldest of the group, spoke up. His voice was rough. "That is where the first sinkhole appeared, at the old mine. Since then, the infected have been heading there. Every time the pulse hits, they move faster, like it is guiding them. We think they are building tunnels down there. Maybe nests. Maybe worse." Ethan stared at the map, his heart pounding. He thought of the sound beneath his house, the way it had matched a heartbeat. "Have you gone down there?" Harper shook her head quickly. "No one who goes near that place returns. Even the animals avoid it. It is like the earth itself wants to keep it secret." Ethan leaned against the desk, trying to process it all. The infected were not mindless, they were organized, controlled. And if they were building something, then whatever was beneath West Hollow was getting closer to the surface. For the first time since the outbreak began, Ethan felt real fear. not of the infected but of what they served. He remembered the way one of them had whispered his name in a broken voice. That night the group tried to rest in turns. Harper sat near the door with a shotgun across her knees, her eyes half open. Ethan stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the pulse through the floorboards. It came every few seconds now, stronger than before, as if something beneath the town was stretching awake. Then, just past midnight, a soft sound broke the silence. Ethan looked up. One of the men in the corner, Porter, was standing. His eyes were open but empty. His mouth moved, forming silent words before sound finally escaped. "It is calling." He turned toward the door, slow and mechanical, and began to walk. Harper jumped up and shouted his name, but he did not stop. He stepped outside into the blackness, his figure swallowed by the dark before anyone could reach him, and the pulse. It grew louder. At midnight, one of our own stood up, eyes blank, and whispered, "It is calling." Then he walked straight into the dark. The next morning the sun never truly rose. A dull red haze hung over the sky like smoke from a faraway fire. No birds sang. No wind moved the trees. Ethan sat near the broken window of the classroom, staring at the woods where Porter had vanished. Harper had not spoken a single word since midnight. She just sat there gripping the shotgun, eyes fixed on the door. Around noon the pulse came again, slow, steady, like something breathing through the ground. But this time it felt closer. The candles on the desks trembled as dust fell from the ceiling. The teenage boy whispered, "It is right under us." Ethan stood. "If it is under us," he said, "then we need to know what it is." Harper looked at him sharply. "You want to go down there?" Ethan nodded. "Whatever is happening is spreading. If we wait, it will come for us anyway." The others exchanged nervous looks. No one argued, but no one volunteered either. Finally, Harper sighed and handed him a flashlight. "There used to be an old maintenance tunnel under this building," she said. "The janitor used it when the school had a basement furnace. It connects to the old storm drains, maybe more." They moved the broken shelves in the back hallway until they found a hatch beneath the floorboards. It was rusted shut, but with enough force Ethan managed to pry it open. A wave of cold, damp air rushed out, thick, heavy, and sour like the smell of something buried for years. Harper stayed at the top while Ethan descended the narrow metal ladder. Each rung creaked under his boots. The light from above faded quickly, swallowed by the dark. When his feet touched the ground, he raised his flashlight and froze. The walls of the tunnel were not concrete anymore. They were covered in something that looked like roots. Thick, dark veins spreading across the stone, pulsing faintly as if blood moved through them. Ethan touched the wall. It was warm. The hum was louder here, not just a vibration, but a deep rhythm that echoed inside his chest. It reminded him of standing too close to a generator. Except this sound came from everywhere at once. He started recording on his handheld device, holding the microphone near the roots. The waveform jumped violently on the screen, reacting to the unseen energy around him. He moved forward slowly, the beam of his flashlight shaking in his hand. The tunnel split into two paths. To the left, a soft red glow flickered from deeper underground. To the right, he saw movement, something shifting along the wall. Like the roots themselves were breathing, Ethan's heart pounded. Every instinct told him to turn back, but curiosity pushed harder. He followed the left path deeper into the red light. The tunnel sloped downward, and the sound grew stronger until it felt like the earth was whispering directly into his skull. Then he saw it. The roots thickened around a massive open chamber, wrapping around old pipes, desks, and pieces of metal like veins reclaiming the bones of a dead city. In the center of the chamber was a pit, a dark hole surrounded by a ring of flesh-like growth, pulsing with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. The red light came from within it, glowing through the moving tissue. Ethan stepped closer. The hum vibrated through the air so deeply that his flashlight flickered. He crouched beside one of the roots and placed his hand on it. The instant his skin touched the surface, his vision shattered. He saw flashes, faces, thousands of faces. People screaming, crying, eyes wide in terror. Their voices blended together into a storm of agony. He saw the streets of West Hollow, the infected walking in unison, their mouths moving but not speaking. He saw the mines, tunnels twisting downward into a glowing abyss, and beneath it all, something vast, something alive, breathing through the earth. He pulled his hand back with a gasp. His head throbbed, his pulse racing. He stumbled backward, nearly falling. The echoes in his mind did not stop. He could still hear the screams overlapping, merging into something that was not human. They were not random cries. They were patterns, repeating tones, words. He realized it then. What he had been recording for weeks was not just noise. It was communication. Every pulse, every vibration, every sound that shook the ground was part of a message. He raised the recorder again and played back the last few seconds. The waveform trembled. Beneath the static, he heard it clearly this time. A sound like a voice, deep and layered, speaking in a rhythm that felt ancient. Ethan froze. His breath caught in his throat. The hum filled the chamber again, stronger now, answering the sound of his recorder like an echo calling back. And as he stared into the glowing pit, realization hit him like a knife to the chest. The hum was not sound. It was language. Ethan ran through the tunnel, the echoes of the hum chasing him like thunder under the earth. His recorder still buzzed in his hand, the waveform spiking wildly as if reacting to something alive around him. When he finally reached the hatch, Harper was waiting at the top, pale and trembling. "Ethan, what happened down there?" she asked as he climbed out. He tried to speak, but his voice shook. "It is alive. The roots, they are connected to everything. It is not infection. It is communication." The others stared at him in confusion and fear. Ethan placed his recorder on the desk and pressed play. The sound that filled the room was a deep, layered vibration that seemed to come from inside their own bones. Harper covered her ears, grimacing. The teenage boy stepped back, eyes wide. "What is that?" Harper asked. Ethan looked at her. "It is speaking." Before anyone could respond, the building shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered out. Somewhere outside, a deep rumble moved through the ground, longer and stronger than any before. It did not stop this time. It kept going. They rushed to the window. Far beyond the forest, the horizon rippled like water. The trees bent and cracked as the soil itself began to move, rising and falling in massive waves. "It is spreading," Harper whispered. "The pulse, it is everywhere." Ethan grabbed the radio on the desk and turned the dial. Every channel was filled with the same static hum, repeating at perfect intervals. He switched frequencies, searching for a human voice, but all he found were fragments of emergency transmissions, global tremors, simultaneous across continents. Not seismic, pattern consistent with biological rhythm. The sound coming from beneath ocean floors. The radio cut off with a pop. Ethan froze, staring at the silent device. The others looked at him, waiting for an answer he could not give. The tremors were no longer local. The pulse had gone global. He took a deep breath. "It is awake." Hours passed. Night came again, but the darkness outside was different now. The stars were faint. The air itself felt heavy, as if gravity had deepened. Ethan sat by the classroom window, staring out into the endless shadows, his recorder still running beside him. Every few minutes the ground throbbed beneath his feet, matching the rhythm of a living thing. He thought about what he had seen in the tunnels, the faces, the voices, the endless scream that had formed into words. It was not chaos. It was intelligence forming from the noise, thought born from memory. Each person it consumed became part of something larger. The infected were not slaves. They were neurons, cells of a growing brain spreading through the world. The root mind, as he now called it, was evolving, using human minds as its own. Harper approached quietly and sat beside him. "You think it is trying to talk to you, do you not?" Ethan nodded. "It already has." He showed her his notebook, filled with notes and symbols copied from his recordings. Every hum has a pattern. Every pattern repeats after a set of intervals. It is like a sentence. It is learning our structure, our language. And when I touched the roots, it learned mine. Harper's face went pale. "You mean it knows who you are?" Ethan looked down at his hands. Yes, it knows everything I know. Outside, a low sound rolled through the earth again, but this time it was not a pulse. It was a word. A deep, drawn-out vibration that almost sounded like a name. Harper froze. Did you hear that? Ethan swallowed hard. Yes, the sound came again, louder. The ground vibrated in sync with it. The windows trembled. Ethan's name filled the room, twisted and distorted, but still recognizably his. He turned to Harper. It said my name. She looked at him in horror. You are imagining it. He shook his head. No, I heard it before. Weeks ago. When one of the infected whispered to me. Harper backed away. You need to rest. Ethan stood and grabbed his recorder. The waveform still pulsed across the screen, alive, responding to something unseen. It is not speaking to everyone, he said quietly. It is speaking to me. For the rest of the night he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of the tunnel again. Thousands of eyes staring through the dark, all connected by veins of living root. And beneath it all, the deep, calm rhythm of a creature older than the earth itself, listening to him as he breathed. He sat up at dawn, his mind foggy and his pulse unsteady. The recorder, still running beside him, began to move on its own. The waveform flattened, then twisted into a perfect line before erupting into motion again. Then it happened. From the speaker came a voice, clear, human, and calm. It said his name again. But this time it said it using his own voice. By morning, the hum had become a constant presence. It no longer came in pulses. It flowed through the air like invisible electricity, vibrating the glass and the walls, making the entire school feel alive. None of them spoke much that day. Harper sat near the door, clutching the shotgun, her eyes bloodshot. The teenage boy kept drawing circles on the floor with a piece of chalk, spirals that always led to the same shape, a root spreading outward. Ethan stared at the recorder on his desk. It was silent now, but he knew that silence meant it was listening. Somewhere beneath their feet, the root mind was still awake. It was spreading. Around noon they heard something new. Engines. Real engines. The low mechanical roar of trucks echoing through the woods. Harper jumped up, rushing to the window. Dust clouds rose from the dirt road beyond the trees. A convoy was approaching. Military, Harper whispered, her voice trembling between relief and disbelief. Ethan's heart raced. He had almost forgotten what real vehicles sounded like. The group gathered near the window as several armored trucks rolled into view, covered in mud and marked with faded symbols of the National Defense Force. Soldiers stepped out wearing masks and heavy suits. Their movements were slow, perfectly coordinated like a single unit. One of them raised a loudspeaker. "Attention civilians," the voice boomed, flat and metallic. "We are here to extract survivors. Please remain calm and prepare to evacuate." The survivors exchanged looks of shock and hope. Harper turned to Ethan, her voice breaking. "We are getting out of here." But something in Ethan's chest tightened. He watched the soldiers carefully, their posture, the way their helmets turned. Every head moved at the exact same angle at the exact same time. Their eyes, visible through the clear visors, blinked together, perfectly synchronized. Ethan whispered, "Something is wrong." The soldiers began to approach the building. The one in front removed his helmet, revealing a face that looked too calm. His expression did not change even as he spoke. "We have orders to take all survivors to the evacuation site. You will be safe underground." "Underground?" Harper repeated, confused. "Why not north? The cities?" The man smiled slightly. "Underground is safer. The surface is compromised." Ethan stepped forward. "Where exactly are you taking us?" The soldier turned his head sharply like a machine. "To the root shelters." Ethan froze. "What did you say?" "Root shelters," the man repeated, tone identical, eyes unblinking. "You will be protected. Please follow." Ethan looked at Harper. "Do not trust them," he whispered. But the others were already moving. The sight of armed soldiers and real vehicles had filled them with desperate hope. They followed obediently as the soldiers led them outside. The teenage boy clutched his bag and smiled for the first time in days. "We are saved," he said. Ethan followed behind, his instincts screaming. The soldiers moved in silence, guiding everyone toward the trucks parked near the school gate. There were 6 of them, large, covered, their rear doors open. One by one, the survivors climbed in. The soldiers said nothing, just watched, motionless, until each truck was full. Ethan hung back, pretending to tie his boot. As the last group entered, he noticed something strange. There were no driver footprints near the vehicles. The engines were still running, but no one was in the cabins. He glanced at Harper. She was climbing into one of the trucks, still gripping her shotgun. "Ethan, come on!" she shouted. He took a step forward, but then he noticed the ground near the trucks. The soil there was moving. Small cracks spread outward and something dark pushed up from underneath. Roots. Thin, black, glistening roots that pulsed in rhythm with the hum. They reached toward the tires like veins feeding into flesh. Ethan's stomach turned. "No." He called out, "Harper, wait!" But before she could react, the soldiers began to close the truck doors. Their movements were identical. Every hand lifting, every latch locking at the same second. The metal slammed shut with a perfect unified clang. Then the soldiers turned toward Ethan. Their faces were calm, expressionless. The one without a helmet tilted his head. "You will come too," he said. Ethan backed away slowly. "Where are you taking them?" "To safety," the man replied. "To the heart." The engines roared louder. One by one, the trucks began to move, but they did not drive toward the road. Instead, they rolled slowly toward the old mining trail, the one that led down into the valley. The soldiers followed on foot, still in formation, their eyes fixed forward. Ethan hid behind a tree and waited until they disappeared into the forest. His mind was spinning. He had to know what was happening. He followed the trail quietly, keeping to the shadows. The road ended near a massive hole in the ground, the same one he had seen marked on the map as the heart. There, he saw the truth. The trucks were parked in a half-circle near the sinkhole. Their engines were still running, but the cabins were empty. The soldiers were gone. The back doors of the trucks hung open, revealing nothing inside. No passengers, no survivors, not even equipment. Only dark stains on the metal floor. Ethan crept closer. The hum was deafening now, echoing from the pit. He leaned over the edge and shone his flashlight downward. The beam caught movement. The tunnels below were alive. Roots twisting, walls breathing, and shadows of human figures moving deeper into the earth, their bodies stiff and their eyes blank. That was when Ethan understood. There was no evacuation. There was only collection. When I followed them, I saw the trucks were empty, but the tunnels were full. Ethan's descent felt endless. The tunnel sloped downward in a perfect spiral, as if carved not by machines but by something that understood symmetry far too well. The walls were no longer just dirt and stone, they were breathing. Thin veins of light pulsed through the earth, glowing with the same rhythm that haunted his recordings. Each beat grew louder, deeper, almost as if the planet itself had a heartbeat. When he finally reached the bottom, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that stretched farther than his flashlight could reach. The air was warm and heavy, carrying the scent of soil and rot. In the dim light, Ethan could make out shapes, massive roots twisting together like tendons, spreading across the ceiling and floor, merging into something enormous at the center. It was alive. The thing pulsed slowly, wetly, each movement sending tremors through the ground. Its surface was not smooth like bark or flesh, but a horrifying mix of both. Mechanical cables intertwined with organic roots, metal plates fused with muscle tissue. The deeper Ethan stared, the more it felt like the structure was staring back. He stepped closer, his recorder still running. "This is what they were building," he whispered, his voice shaking. "This is what controls them." As he moved his flashlight across the surface, his breath caught in his throat. Embedded in the pulsing wall were faces, hundreds of them. Some were twisted in agony, others eerily calm. Their eyes were open, glassy, unfocused, yet alive. Every few seconds one would twitch or mouth silent words as if still trying to speak. He recognized one. It was the teacher from the school. Then another, the man from the radio station. And then another. The girl he saw vanish in the forest days earlier. All of them were here, fused into this living machine. The whispers began softly at first, a distant murmur that echoed around the chamber, but as Ethan stepped closer they grew clearer. The voices were layered, overlapping, yet perfectly synchronized. It was as if thousands of people were speaking the same sentence together, their words bending and twisting into something human yet not. Ethan froze as the whispers formed actual words. "We are awake." He stumbled backward, his heart pounding. The voices grew louder, echoing through his skull. The faces on the surface shifted slightly, mouths opening in unison, eyes rolling toward him. Every single face was staring at him now. "We are awake." He tried to run, but the ground beneath his feet pulsed like a heartbeat, trapping him in place. The roots along the floor began to move, wrapping slowly around his ankles, crawling up his legs. The light from his flashlight flickered violently as the air filled with the low, bone-deep hum he had been chasing since the beginning. Then, the whispers changed. The harmony broke. Now they were saying something else, something directed at him. "We remember you," Ethan gasped, dropping his recorder. He looked up again and his blood ran cold. Among the countless faces fused into the wall, one had shifted, still forming, still molding itself out of the living mass. It was incomplete, half-formed, half-human. But the eyes were unmistakable, they were his. He could feel the thing beneath the earth breathing with him, copying his rhythm, his pulse. It was no longer just feeding, it was learning. The recorder lying on the floor caught his last trembling words before the static swallowed everything. And among the faces, I saw my own. Ethan sat in the corner of the chamber, knees drawn to his chest. The root mind's hum vibrated through the walls, through the roots, through the floor, and now, unmistakably, through his bones. Every pulse reverberated like a drumbeat, slow and steady, echoing through the empty tunnels beneath West Hollow. His hand shook as he held the recorder in front of him. "This is my last log," he whispered, voice trembling. "If anyone finds this, know what is happening. The pulse. It is spreading. Not just here, not just in this town. It is reaching beyond. Cities, states, the whole world. It grows stronger with every person it consumes." He paused, listening. The chamber was alive with the soft, layered whispers of the fused faces embedded in the root mind. Every so often, one of them turned, their eyes glinting in the flickering light, mouths moving in unison with the rhythm of the ground. Ethan flinched each time, remembering how human they had once been. "I do not know how much time I have left," he continued, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The root mind. It is inside me already. I can feel it in my thoughts. My pulse aligns with the hum. My heartbeat, it is no longer mine alone." Ethan's flashlight flickered as the chamber shook. A low rolling tremor moved through the tunnels, stronger than any before. Dust fell from the ceiling, and small roots writhed along the walls as if responding to the vibration. He clutched the recorder tighter, speaking fast, urgently. "You must listen to me. If the pulse reaches your city, do not panic. Do not move. It is listening. It already knows where you are. If you try to escape, it will find you faster. Stay still. Keep silent. And do not make any noise that it can detect." He paused again. The hum filled his ears, louder, almost intelligible now. For a moment he thought he heard it forming words, commands, questions, perhaps even recognition. It was aware, growing, evolving. Ethan realized he was no longer separate from it. Every fear, every thought he had ever had, was now mirrored in the rhythm beneath his feet. The walls pulsed in response to his heartbeat, the roots tightening slightly as if testing him. Ethan knew this was not an accident. The root mind wanted him to be aware, to record, to pass the warning. "I do not know if anyone will survive this, but I must try," he said, voice cracking. "To anyone listening, please understand. It is patient. It does not tire. It is not blind. It waits and it learns. You cannot hide from it. It will find you through the vibrations in the ground, the tremors, the hum. It is a language, and it will speak to you if you are not careful." Another pulse shook the chamber. Ethan stumbled but held on to the recorder. The shadows of faces on the walls flickered violently with the vibration. Mouths opening, eyes staring. whispering his name and countless others. The sound was deafening and yet silent, pressing directly into his skull. He forced himself to speak once more, knowing these would be his final words. If you hear the heartbeat beneath your feet, do not move. It already knows where you are. Hide if you can, and pray that it has not already chosen you. Ethan's hand trembled as he placed the recorder down beside him, the red light blinking steadily. The camera, if anyone were to find it, would capture the subtle shaking of the ground, rhythmic, relentless, the pulse of the root mind itself. The whispers grew louder, forming layers of voices, all harmonizing with the rhythm of the roots. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the entity within him, within the earth, aligned completely with his heartbeat. He was part of it now, but still aware, still human, if only in thought. And as the tremor surged one last time, his words echoed through the chamber, swallowed by the darkness, carried through the tunnels, and perhaps somewhere above into the cities waiting in silence. If you hear the heartbeat beneath your feet, do not move. It already knows where you are.